What's going on, guys? So I just want to kind of do a kind of off-the-cuff video today. I got to make some modifications to my mini forge here. Basically, I got to make this thing bigger. I got to kind of widen it out here and add some length to it. And I figured I might as well just do a quick video on it and also give you some tips on using one of these or getting the most out of it. Because I've used this thing now for, I don't know, maybe 20 or 25 knives. I've used this thing a lot, and I've learned a lot about it and how to use it and ways of getting the most out of it. Now, one of the things that I mentioned in the previous video where I made this is that a smaller torch like this works. And it does. This little torch right here will get the job done out of a forge like this. Now, these things are, I think, the cheapest torches that you can buy. They're like 10 bucks or something. You can buy like a whole kit for $13 or $14, including the propane. So they're very cheap, but they don't put out a lot of heat. Now these, they do work. Let me get a knife here real quick. You can heat treat knives up to about this size. Let me see. Like I said, this is an off-the-cuff video, but this is a 4-inch blade length, and this will get the job done. One of these smaller torches inside a forge like this. You might have a hard time heat treating a blade of this size with this tiny little torch without a forge. You really do need something that'll contain the heat. Another thing is that you need to let this thing heat up for a while. With a small torch like this, you're looking at maybe 10 minutes to get this thing as hot as it's gonna get. We'll put it that way. Now, I don't use a torch like this regularly. Typically, I use this thing. This is the TS4000. They still make these. They sell them at Home Depot, and they make a bigger one than this. I think it's a TS8000, which is a variable, has a variable output. The one downside of this is it's almost, I wouldn't say it's too powerful for this thing for heat treating, but for heat treating, it would be nice to kind of tone this down a little bit and maybe have a little bit less flame inside here, because this thing really puts out heat inside this little forge. So just a couple things to keep in mind. Now, something else on my previous video, or what I basically did here is I drilled 2 holes in the side, and that allowed the torch to, let me see if I can get this set up here. That allowed the torch to kind of sit in here straight on like this. And that worked okay, but it works a lot better if you can actually angle this thing slightly backwards and slightly upwards. So what I ended up doing, and I'm gonna actually do this a little bit more when I go to do the modifying, is I actually chiseled out a little bit here. I don't know if you can tell, but I kind of took a little bit of this corner out, so this torch will kind of angle backwards, and I took a little bit out of the top brick here. You can probably see this better. See how I kind of took a little bit out there? But basically what that does is it allows the torch to kind of sit back and angle up, and that allows the propane to, or the flame pattern to almost swirl inside the chamber here, and you get a much more even, consistent heat out of it. Whereas if you just kind of stick it straight in, you don't get that swirl pattern, and I don't think you get, I don't know, complete combustion, but it's different. You don't get as much heat out of it. Now, another thing is when I go to insert the torch into the burn chamber, I only put it in about that far. I apologize, my sound's going to be all weird because I'm behind the mic. So I'm only putting this thing in literally just enough to give it some sort of stability and kind of hold it there. What I found is when I put it all the way in, I don't get kind of that Venturi effect. I think that's the right word. It just kind of like, even with the torch angled up and back, I don't get that swirl pattern. So having this thing kind of out farther and kind of angled in with these little cutouts here, it really gets that swirl pattern going, and it almost, you don't even get like a direct flame in here. You almost get kind of the propane burning inside the burn chamber. And as far as the hole placement, where to kind of place this front hole, I haven't found that I've used the back one. If you use a powerful torch like this, you really don't need the back hole, and a lot of times I end up just kind of plugging it up with something like an old bolt or I don't know, just something to shove in there, a little rock or something to keep the flame from shooting out. But you really only need the first one. As far as the placement goes, I like it right here, about 2/3 of the way back. I think if it was in the middle, you might have trouble getting to that hot spot with some longer knives, or with some shorter knives, not some longer knives. Well, I guess you can see that I've cracked it. Hopefully that goes to show how fragile these are. Luckily I've got a couple more of these, but I think I'm still going to be able to use this. So I still have a little bit more chiseling to do at the top, but that might give me just enough extra length for the couple knives that I'm working on. Basically what I do here is I just get a piece of wood and kind of prop this thing up, and I just put the tip of that thing in there like that. So I've only got about maybe a 1/4 inch worth of nozzle in there, and then that's pretty much it. I don't know if I necessarily recommend doing it this way because this thing can fall out, and it has happened to me before, so this is not something that you want to turn on and just leave run and not supervise it. Needs supervision. If you're not standing close enough to catch this thing, if it does fall out, then turn the torch off before you walk away. At least that's how I look at it. Just have an old piece of scrap steel. We'll see how much of this we can heat up. So one of the questions that I got on my last video was, what do you need, propane or MAP gas, and which one works better? Well, honestly, you do get more heat out of MAP gas. The problem with MAP gas is it's expensive. In my area, these things cost like $14 a piece. Propane, on the other hand, is $2.99 for one of these, so a lot cheaper on the propane. If you can make it work with your particular torch, I'd stick with propane just because of the cost. If you do need a little bit of extra heat with your particular torch, meaning if you find that your torch isn't getting hot enough, you can try MAP gas, but honestly, I would put that money towards a different torch or a more powerful torch, like the TS4000, the one I'm using now, the TS8000, and use propane. Propane inside these mini forges is plenty. With one of these torches, you can easily get this up to heat treating temperatures. Which is something else I should mention, is I use this pretty much only for heat treating. I don't use it for forging. I think if you're looking for something that you want to heat a piece of steel and forge it into something, sure, you can do this with small pieces, or you can use this with smaller pieces of metal and get it up to forging temperatures. But it's going to be slow, and it's really not ideal. You really need a much more powerful forge in order to do actual forging work. But for heat treating purposes, which is basically the only reason that I made this thing, it works great, this particular setup. One thing I forgot to mention is the size of your burn chamber has a lot to do with how hot the forge will get. If you only have a smaller torch, keep your burn chamber small. Basically, the smaller the burn chamber, the hotter you'll be able to get the forge. So keep that in mind when you go to build something like this. You can always make the burn chamber bigger, but you can't make it smaller. Alright guys, so hopefully this video helps answer a bunch of questions that I got from my mini forge build video. If you have any other questions, ask me in the comments below. Obviously, the comments are always down below. I don't know why everybody always says down below, but the comments are down below in case you missed it. Anyway, I hope this video wasn't too boring, and this thing is still really hot. I can feel the heat on my face, so we'll see you in the next video. I'm gonna go cool off because it's kind of hot in here now.